After a record run, gold prices have fallen, stocks are sliding and investors are nervous. No prizes for guessing who has triggered this. Donald Trump has announced his pick for the next chief of the US Federal Reserve. We'll tell you more. Also in focus is Canada at the risk of breaking up. The US is reaching out to Alberta separatists. While the move is problematic, it's also a lesson for Canada, we say, that harbored and supported Indian separatists for years and justified their actions as freedom of expression. In West Asia, another US warship has reached near Iran. Is Trump preparing for an attack? We will decode the signals for you. While Keir Starmer's visit to China has upset America, what Pakistan's Army Chief Asim Munir is doing in the terror hub of Bahawalpur, is artificial intelligence really making us more productive or just more distracted? Is Russia using Starlink to attack Ukraine? And why women's STEM research takes longer to get approved? A new study tells us what we've always known. All this and more coming. The headlines first. Israel expels South Africa's charge d'affaires in a tit-for-tat move. Earlier, Pretoria had declared the senior-most Israeli diplomat persona non grata. Relations between the two countries have been strained in recent months. Ties nosedived after South Africa dragged Israel to the International Court of Justice over its actions in Gaza. Turkey deploys F-16 fighter jets to Somalia as Ankara seeks to expand its military footprint in the Horn of Africa. The deployment follows Israel's recognition of Somaliland, which is a breakaway region. Turkey is a key ally of Somalia. In 2017, Ankara opened its largest overseas military base in Mogadishu. New Delhi to host the second India-Arab foreign ministers' meet tomorrow. It is a significant diplomatic milestone as New Delhi looks to strengthen ties with the Arab world. India and the UAE will co-chair the meeting, which is taking place after a decade. The inaugural session was held in Bahrain in 2016. Denmark tightens its immigration policy. It will expel non-Danish citizens who have been jailed for a year or more. Under current rules, expulsions are not automatic. Copenhagen also plans to boost incentives for voluntary refugee returns. And these reforms are expected to come into effect from the 1st of May. And Novak Djokovic eyes history as he sets up a clash with Carlos Alcaraz in the Australian Open final. The 38-year-old Serb beat reigning champion Jannik Sinner in a 5-set thriller to reach Sunday's final. Alcaraz is 16 years younger than Djokovic, who is looking to become the first player ever to win 25 Grand Slams. Donald Trump is planning another shakeup, and the target this time could be the financial markets. Investors are feeling nervous. Gold and silver prices have crashed, and US stocks are sliding. Traders are bracing for the US president's next move. He has named the next chair of the US Federal Reserve. That's the American Central Bank. Trump has been at odds with the bank's current chief, so he is gearing up to replace him.
As you were thinking about Fed chair, what were the characteristics that you were looking for in the end?
And I'll be announcing that tomorrow morning.
Well, Trump made that statement yesterday. Today, he made the nomination public. Trump has picked Kevin Warsh to lead the Fed. And the very prospect has sent markets into a tizzy. Look at gold and silver. This month, both assets, gold and silver, hit record highs. Silver surged by 56%. That's 56% rise in 1 month for silver. It's the biggest monthly gain ever recorded. And gold rose by more than 20%. It's the highest jump for the yellow metal since 1980. But today, the trend reversed completely. Gold and silver ETFs had a sharp fall today. ETFs are exchange-traded funds. Think of them as mutual funds where they pool investor money to buy assets. Gold and silver ETFs work in the same way. Today, they fell by as much as 23%. And that's because investors pulled their money. They locked in their profits and they dumped their holdings. And why is that? Because of a new risk, thanks to Donald Trump. Let's look at his Fed nominee, Kevin Warsh. Warsh is a former central banker. He served on the Fed board from 2006 to 2011. He was appointed by George W. Bush. And he could deliver what Trump has wanted all along: lower interest rates and a full shake-up of the system. That's what Donald Trump wants. He wants interest rates to be cut. But the current Fed chief did not agree. So Trump called for a regime change at the Fed, as if America's central bank is run by a despot. And this is what makes the markets nervous, because leading the Federal Reserve is one of the most powerful jobs in the United States. The chair of the Fed controls America's central bank. They set the price of borrowing, and they decide when to raise or cut interest rates. These choices affect everything, from the interest that Americans earn from banks to their home and car loans and business investments and inflation. All of it is impacted by the Fed's decisions. The current Fed chair is Jerome Powell. His term ends in May, in the month of May. Now, as per American law, Trump cannot fire the chairman of the Federal Reserve. He will have to wait until May to replace Jerome Powell, but Trump is making aggressive moves, and he's named this replacement in January itself to send a message that he wants Powell out. Interestingly, Powell, too, was appointed by Donald Trump. This was during Trump's first term as president. But ever since he's returned to power for the second term, Trump has been gunning for Powell. The US president has publicly attacked him, even humiliated him, all because Powell refused to do Trump's bidding. He refused to slash interest rates.
Fight a bad Fed chairman, a guy that has we call him too late. He's too late. Jerome, too late. Powell, he's too late. He wasn't too late before the Democrats on the election, then he was too early. But he wants to keep rates as high as possible.
Trump wants loans to get cheaper. He wants money flowing freely into the economy. He believes that this will boost growth and the stock market. But Powell and his team feel differently. They think that sharp cuts would be counterproductive, that such cuts would lead to more inflation and hurt the economy in the long run. So what is the current interest rate? It stands at 3.5 to 3.75%. And what does Donald Trump want? He wants the rate to go down to 1%. That's a very steep cut. Powell has refused to do it, and this has made him a target of Donald Trump. A few weeks ago, the US government started investigating Jerome Powell. The US Justice Department opened a criminal investigation. Oh, what? Renovations at the Fed headquarters. Critics say this is an attempt to build pressure on Powell, but he remains defiant. On Wednesday, the Fed reviewed interest rates again, and they decided to make no changes to the rates. That's when Trump swung into action. On Thursday, he met Kevin Warsh at the White House, and then he began dropping hints.
I'd rather say it tomorrow, but just an outstanding person, and a person that won't be too surprising to people. A lot of people think that this is somebody that could have been there a few years ago. It's going to be somebody that is very respected, somebody that's known to everybody in the financial world, and I think it's going to be a very good choice. I hope so.
So
I mean,
someone who was on your short list, sir?
On my reasonably short list, yeah.
And today he made the name public. The reaction was sharp. US markets fell in early hours of trading. All the leading indices, the S&P 500, the Dow Jones, the Nasdaq, they were all in the red. Asian markets too closed in the red today, and the record rally of gold and silver reversed. There is no denying that investors are jittery, because this change of guard at the Fed would mean uncertainty. Warsh might cut rates too quickly, or Trump's influence on him could compromise the Fed's independence. Neither scenario is ideal, of course, because central banks have immense influence over a country's economy. Their decisions, like I said, can impact the currency, the trade flow, and broadly the movement of investments and money. And that is why Trump's choice is under scrutiny, because this is not about economics. This is about controlling the Fed. And Trump has made his first move.
expect the U.S. administration to respect Canadian sovereignty.
Is Donald Trump trying to break Canada apart? I know it's a loaded question to start with, but then again, this is Trump we're talking about, so nothing is beyond the pale. He fired the first salvo last year with a line that many dismissed as a joke. Trump began calling Canada the 51st American state. At first, it sounded like he was just trolling them. Then came the social media posts, a map of Canada draped in the American flag. And now Trump seems to have crossed all red lines. Here's what reports say. Trump officials met with Canadian separatists. It's a group called the Alberta Prosperity Project, or AP. These are separatists from Alberta, which is a Canadian province. This group wants a separate state for themselves, and Trump officials met them. What did they discuss? Is Trump trying to divide Canada, and what does this mean for the world? We'll start with the meetings. Reports say these separatist leaders met Trump officials at least thrice since April last year, 3 times. All the meetings were held in Washington. Then the U.S. Treasury Secretary spoke about Alberta. His name is Scott Bessent. He called Alberta a natural partner for the U.S.
Alberta has a wealth of natural resources, but the Canadian government won't let them build a pipeline to the Pacific. I think we should let them come down into the U.S. People are talking. People want sovereignty. They want what the U.S. has got.
And guess who reposted his comments? A man called Jeffrey Ratt. He's the leader of the Alberta Prosperity Project. He says their group is seeking another meeting with Washington, this time for a credit line. The ask is quite simple. A $500 billion credit line to support Alberta if an independence referendum is held in the future. Basically, if they ask for independence, they want the Americans to give them a credit line. Of course, Canada has been watching all of this, and as you can imagine, they're not happy about it. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has issued a strong statement. He says he expects the United States to respect Canadian sovereignty.
I expect the U.S. administration to respect Canadian sovereignty. I'm always clear in my conversation with President Trump to that effect, and then move on to what we can do together.
Other Canadian leaders have been less diplomatic, like British Columbia Premier David Eby. He has called it an act of treason. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has appealed for unity. Both of these are Canadian provinces, and their leaders are slamming the United States. But this entire incident begs one question. Why Alberta? What does the U.S. want from this province? And why do they want to break away from Canada? You see, Alberta is not just another Canadian province. It is Canada's energy engine. More than 80%, more than 80% of Canada's oil comes from this province. Around 60% of its natural gas also comes from here. But Alberta is landlocked. To sell its oil globally, it needs pipelines. And these pipelines must cross other provinces, and they must clear federal regulations, none of which has happened. And that is what is making the locals angry. Many Albertans believe that their province is being penalized. Ottawa's climate rules, their carbon taxes, their pipeline delays are all deliberately choking Alberta's economy. That's what they feel. They also point to Canada's equalization system. It's a system where richer provinces help fund the poorer ones. Now, Alberta contributes heavily, but they believe that they receive nothing in return. Hence the push for a separate state. And this message finds a wide audience in the province. Look at the latest opinion polls. About 30% of Albertans are open to the idea of leaving Canada. 30% of the population, although many see it more as a protest and less in terms of a real breakup. Now, all of this comes amid Trump's expanding trade war. He is threatening a 50% tariff on Canadian aircraft. Canada has refused certification for a few models of the Gulfstream. The Gulfstream is a U.S. aircraft manufacturer. Trump wants Canada to certify Gulfstream immediately. If not, he has threatened massive tariffs on Canadian aircraft. He has targeted the Bombardier, that's a Canadian aerospace manufacturer. Trump says he will decertify Canadian jets. Now, if you join the dots, you will see that Donald Trump is putting pressure from two sides: economic pain on the outside and political anxiety on the inside. And he did the same with Greenland. So this raises concerns for the whole world. If this is how America deals with its allies, if this is how they treat their allies, what can the rest of the world expect? Having said that, it is interesting to see Canada in this pickle. For years, they have supported, even defended Indian separatists. New Delhi kept complaining, but Canada gave a safe haven to Khalistani groups. They openly threaten India's territorial integrity. They call for a separate Sikh homeland in India. They make offensive speeches. They attack Indian diplomatic missions. They threaten Indian leaders. New Delhi calls them extremists. India has given proof of their terrorist links to Canada, but Canada continues to defend them, calling it freedom of expression. But now karma is catching up. The tables have turned. Canada is dealing with a separatist movement of its own, a movement that is being supported by another country. And suddenly, sovereignty is no longer an abstract principle, it is personal. So we say this is not just about Trump or Alberta or whatever he's doing there. This is about Western double standards and hypocrisy, where separatism is defended as free speech until it knocks on your own door. Our next story is from Iran. The protests have subsided, but the threat from America has not. Will the US attack Iran? That question refuses to go away because Washington is sending mixed signals. Trump has moved what he calls his armada near Iran. It's a signal from Pentagon. That's the US Defense Ministry. This kind of military movement shows preparation for a possible attack. But on the other hand, Trump is suggesting that he wants to talk to Iran, that he does not want to use his military in West Asia. So what does the US president really want? Is this a countdown to another war, or is this just muscle flexing? Well, here's what we know. Earlier this week, Donald Trump made a statement. He said the US has a massive armada heading towards Iran. That's his way of saying that powerful warships are in the region and they're ready to strike Iran. Now look at what this armada includes: 1 aircraft carrier, fighter jets, destroyers, and combat ships. And that's not it. Reports say that the US has sent another warship to the region. It is called the USS Delbert Black. This takes the total number of American warships in the region to 6. That's what you call a military buildup. We saw the same near Venezuela last month, and we know how that ended. The US abducted the Venezuelan president. Having said that, Iran is not Venezuela. It has a bigger, stronger military, and the US knows that. The US knows that Iran is not a pushover. Meanwhile, the rhetoric from Washington continues. Here's what happened at a US cabinet meeting yesterday. Their Secretary of War, or what you'd call a defense minister, is Pete Hegseth. He said that the US is prepared to attack Iran.
You may want to say something about the large fleet of ships that's heading over to the Middle East.
With Iran right now, ensuring that they have all the options to make a deal. They should not pursue nuclear capabilities. We will be prepared to deliver whatever this president expects of the War Department.
Officials say that Trump has not made a decision. He's still reviewing his options, but he has also been wanting to talk to Iran. Listen to this.
On Iran, Mr. President, have you had any conversations with Iran in the last few days, and are you planning on any?
I have had, and I am planning on it, yeah. We have a lot of very big, very powerful ships sailing to Iran right now, and it would be great if we didn't have to use them.
So that is Trump's position. He wants to stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons, and he wants Tehran to come back to the talking table. How is Iran responding? They say there will be no negotiations under threats. In fact, Iran has now added 1,000 drones to its military. These are drones built after last year's 12-day war, the war that was fought between Iran and Israel. It's also the war where the US attacked Iranian nuclear sites in June last year. Tehran now says it is ready to respond immediately to any attack.
Preparedness for rapid combat operations and decisive responses to any form of aggression continues to guide Iran's defense planning in line with anticipated threats.
At the same time, Tehran is also looking for de-escalation. They do not want a war. Iran's foreign minister is in Turkey for talks today. Turkey is offering to mediate between the US and Iran because Ankara says a war in Iran would shake the entire region. So it believes that the resumption of Iran-US nuclear talks is vital.
The countries in the region desire peace, stability, and tranquility. In this context, we call on the parties to come to the negotiating table. We believe that addressing the problems individually when the negotiating table is established will facilitate reaching a solution.
Tehran says any diplomacy hinges on threats ending, but it has refused to reduce its missile work.
I should also state unequivocally that Iran's defensive and missile capabilities and Iran's missiles will never be the subject of any negotiations. I do not think any country is prepared to compromise with anyone over its own security and defense. The security of the Iranian people is no one else's business, and we will preserve and expand our defensive capabilities to whatever extent is necessary to defend the country.
Now, in the middle of this, Europe has also stepped in. The European Union has designated the IRGC as a terrorist organization. IRGC is Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. They are not the regular Iranian army. They are a parallel force, a more powerful force. They were created after Iran's revolution in 1979, and they have one job: to protect the Iranian regime. Not the Iranian people, the Iranian regime. Now, the US has designated them as terrorists. The EU, rather, has designated them as terrorists. Why did they do that? Because of the deadly crackdown during recent protests.
In Iran, horrific crackdown on protesters has come at a heavy human cost. The EU already has sweeping sanctions in place, and today ministers agreed to designate Iran Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization.
In turn, Iran is preparing to declare the EU's armed forces terrorists. So where does this leave leave us tonight, rather? With a few harsh realities. Washington is using military pressure to force talks. Tehran is building up its military to deter an attack. One side is saying make a deal. The other side is saying remove the threats first. I guess the question is who will blink first? We'll be tracking this story for you.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network. This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
A very warm welcome and thank you for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak. I'm Akanksha Swarup. Battleground Tamil Nadu is heating up. At the heart of the churn is a simple question: seat sharing. The DMK, dominant and confident after successive electoral victories, sees itself as the natural pole of Tamil Nadu politics. The Congress, once a ruling force in the state and now a junior partner, insists it deserves more than just symbolic representation. And caught between the arithmetic of winnability and the politics of prestige, the alliance appears headed for tough negotiations. But what's adding a new layer of intrigue this time is Congress's growing warmth towards actor-turned-politician Vijay. While Vijay's TVK is still untested at the ballot box, his mass appeal is undeniable. Congress leaders praising Vijay's political entry, attending shared platforms and keeping channels open has not gone unnoticed in Chennai's own power corridors. For the DMK, this outreach raises eyebrows. Congress, however, appears to be playing a slightly different game, one that goes beyond immediate electoral math. which brings us to the larger question. Is Congress using its proximity to Vijay as leverage with the DMK? Is this a subtle signal to the DMK that Congress has options? Or is this simply Congress hedging its bets, keeping lines open in a state where its independent footprint has shrunk dramatically over the years? That's the question we'll be taking up with our guests in just a bit. But that's our first topic of the debate. Also, is Vijay the X factor in battleground Tamil Nadu or just a leverage over here in the overall geopolitical calculus of the upcoming Tamil Nadu Assembly poll? We'll also dive deeper into what's next in Maharashtra politics as fate of NCP hangs in balance. And accused of grievous charges, Tarsen Singh Varech is dancing his way to glory in Jordan. We'll get you all the details about the raging controversy. The man who's also been accused of a sexual crime, now heading the country in Jordan. But first, let's get you the top developments as far as the Congress-DMK seat-sharing conundrum is concerned. Congress has formed a committee, remember, and placed forth its list of demands before Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin. The DMK has, of course, sought more time from Rahul Gandhi to respond to these demands. Sources say Congress has demanded more seats for elections and a share in the government formation. However, DMK is not very enthusiastic about share in government formation, as has always been the case in the years that have followed. However, Congress still feels that DMK is a valued ally and therefore wants to continue this alliance. A few issues have been ironed out at the Rahul Gandhi Kadimur meeting, but suspense over seat sharing and other demands still continues. But it's no surprise that Congress is highly dependent on DMK if it wants to say through in the upcoming election. And history is witness to this. Why so? Because during the 2014 Lok Sabha polls, Congress and DMK fought separately. The Congress vote share was 4.37% and DMK.
Next on the line of fire is Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK. He is visiting China. It's a high-profile visit. We told you about it yesterday. It's the first trip by a British Prime Minister to China in 8 years. And Starmer has gone there with a large delegation, 50 leaders from the world of business and culture. Donald Trump is not happy about this visit. He has criticized Keir Starmer. Trump said that it was, and I'm quoting, it was very dangerous for Britain to do business with China.
Mr. President, what do you think about the UK getting into business with China? Keir Starmer was in Beijing.
Well, it's very dangerous for them to do that, and it's even more dangerous, I think, for Canada to get into business with China. Canada is not doing well. They're doing very poorly, and you can't look at China as the answer. I know China very well. I know President Xi's a friend of mine. I know him very well.
Now, it's not hard to figure out why he's upset. Look at what this visit has achieved so far. Yesterday, Starmer met Xi Jinping in Beijing. The two leaders announced several breakthroughs, like a visa agreement. Britons can now travel to China without a visa and stay there for up to 30 days. This is for both for tourism and business. Visa-free access. These rules will reduce paperwork and they will facilitate travel. It puts the UK on the same list as some of its peers, like countries like France, Germany, Italy, Australia and Japan. Their citizens too enjoy visa-free travel to China. Now people from Britain can do the same. The next breakthrough was on trade, especially on the services front. The UK exports services worth £13 billion to China every year. That's around $17 billion US. That's their export. Both sides want to expand this. They're discussing something like a trade deal, but focused on services and not on goods. China and the UK have agreed to a feasibility study. This is the first step towards a future agreement. And the final breakthrough was on security. Starmer and Xi have signed an intelligence sharing agreement. It focuses on organized crime and illegal immigration. The goal is to disrupt smuggling networks, including gangs that enable illegal immigration from boats into the UK. Apparently, the engines for these boats are made in China, and London wants help from Beijing to put an end to this. These are the tangible takeaways from the trip, and they are significant, no doubt about that. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called his visit historic.
This is a historic visit to China, the first by a British Prime Minister in 8 years. And we've come very much in the spirit of engagement, of resetting, and setting out a consistent, long-term, comprehensive and strategic partnership. And yesterday in Beijing, we had really productive bilateral meetings, including with President Xi, and we were able to open up opportunities for both of our countries and resolve issues between us.
He has brushed off Trump's criticism. In fact, Keir Starmer is the latest name in a growing list of world leaders visiting China. Just 2 weeks ago, it was Mark Carney. The Canadian Prime Minister was in Beijing. It's been a busy month for Chinese diplomats since the start of 2026. In this past month, they've seen several high-profile visits, including South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung, Finland's Prime Minister Petteri Orpo, Ireland's leader Michael Martin, and of course the Prime Ministers of Canada and the UK, Carney and Starmer. That makes it 5 world leaders who visited China in 1 month. And there are more who are coming. In February, for instance, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz will head to Beijing. This points to a wider trend. World leaders are re-engaging with China, not to fully align, but to hedge against the US and to keep their options open in case Trump escalates. Of course, Xi Jinping loves this. He is making an effort to personally engage with visiting leaders. He is assuring them of direct support. And he said he had the same message for Keir Starmer yesterday. Listen to this.
China is willing to develop a long-term, stable, and comprehensive strategic partnership with Britain, which will benefit the people of both countries and also the world. Your visit has attracted a lot of attention. The road to success is often strewn with setbacks.
So China is making all efforts to woo America's closest friends. It's a risky game. Just last year, many of these countries, especially in Europe, were raising trade barriers. They were imposing tariffs on Chinese goods, Chinese imports, especially on electric vehicles. Now, the same countries are at the receiving end of Trump's trade war, so they are reopening their doors to China. Like I said yesterday, it's like falling out of the frying pan into the fire. In Pakistan, their army chief is making fresh moves. We're talking about Field Marshal Asim Munir. This week, he went to Bahawalpur. The name should ring a bell. It is the headquarters of a terrorist group called Jaish-e-Mohammed, the same facility that India demolished last year during Operation Sindoor. Many terrorists were killed in those attacks on Bahawalpur. Later, senior Pakistani generals attended their funerals. Reports said Asim Munir had sent those generals there. And now he himself has visited Bahawalpur, ostensibly to observe some military exercises. That was the official reason given. But what was the real one? What was Asim Munir doing in Bahawalpur? Our next report tells you.
This week, something unusual happened in Pakistan. Field Marshal Asim Munir visited Bahawalpur. On paper, it was a routine visit to observe military exercises. But in geopolitics, context is everything. And this visit sent a message to India and the wider region. Let's break it down. Bahawalpur is not just any Pakistani city. It is the 12th largest city in the country and a key military hub. This week, it hosted a high-intensity field exercise. The Pakistani military called it Steadfast Resolve. The drill took place at Khairpur Temewali. That's close to the India-Pakistan border. Officially, the exercise focused on technology. Pakistani press says the military showcased drones, electronic warfare systems, and new command and control tools. They called it a demonstration of multi-domain warfare and technology-enabled operations. But there was more behind the optics. The choice of location matters. Bahawalpur has a history. It is home to the headquarters of Jaish-e-Mohammed, a group accused of multiple attacks on Indian soil. The compound reportedly spans 18 acres. It includes a mosque, a madrasa, training areas, even a gym and stables. On paper, it's a religious seminary, but experts say it has also served as a training facility. It sits just a few miles from Pakistan's 31 Corps cantonment. That's a major army base. The proximity raises questions about the relationship between the group and elements of the Pakistani security establishment. Islamabad denies these links, but the pattern has drawn international scrutiny. Back in May last year, when India executed Operation Sindoor, Indian forces hit 9 terror-linked facilities across Pakistan. Bahawalpur was one of them. The strikes focused on infrastructure used by Jaish-e-Mohammed. There is also new independent assessment from outside the region. A report by Switzerland-based think tank. It offers a detailed picture into the damage suffered by the Pakistani side. By the morning of May 10th, last year, the Indian Air Force had achieved air superiority over large parts of Pakistani airspace. This matters because it allowed India to strike targets at long range with relative freedom. The report explains how India sustained these operations by using advanced standoff weapons, including BrahMos and Scalp-EG cruise missiles. These systems allowed strikes without crossing deep into hostile airspace. On the other side, the Pakistan Air Force faced growing constraints. The report says its ability to repeat complex operations gradually declined. Pakistan acknowledged the attacks, but downplayed the impact. Still, reports suggest the message was received, and the fallout was significant. The Pakistani army took part in funerals for those killed in the Bahawalpur strikes. Reports say Army Chief Asim Munir issued those orders himself. He directed soldiers and senior officers to attend. So this week's visit fits into a longer timeline of events, of messaging, of signaling. Bahawalpur is not just a location for exercises, it serves a deeper purpose for the Pakistani military and security establishment. And Field Marshal Munir isn't giving up on it.
AI is everywhere in our world, in boardrooms, in offices, on laptops, and inside your workflow. CEOs say artificial intelligence boosts efficiency. It saves 12 hours a week. But workers do not agree. So what is the truth? Is AI genuinely making us more productive? Or is this another tech hype cycle with big promises and small returns? Let's start with the optimistic side. In controlled studies, AI looks quite powerful, like writing, analysis, data-heavy tasks. Generative AI improves performance by 38 to 49%. Task completion time drops by up to 40%. Output quality improves by around 18%. In some roles, novices perform almost as good as experts. Consulting work, research summaries, customer support, and administrative tasks, these are AI-suitable zones, and in these cases, the gains are real. PwC's data backs this up. PwC is PricewaterhouseCoopers. It's a consulting firm. It looks at data from 2018 to 2024. It says productivity growth in AI-exposed industries has quadrupled. It has gone up by 27%. 72% of AI users say they feel more productive. 70% say the quality of their work has improved. At the task level, AI often works. But then comes the disconnect. CEOs say AI saves them over 12 hours a week. But nearly 40% of workers say that they are not saving any time at all. So what explains this gap? You see, AI productivity is uneven. Executives see dashboards, workers deal with prompts, errors and verification. And studies show that workers save only 1.6 to 5.4% of total work hours. What about productivity? That only translates into about 1% of productivity gains. In fact, even where AI works, workers feel uneasy. PwC's survey in Hong Kong shows this. 61% use AI at work, 77% report higher productivity, and only 24% feel more job security. Just 19% see higher pay. And here's the part that most AI demos do not show. Rework. Nearly 40% of all AI time savings are lost to checking and fixing errors. 77% of employees report productivity drops because they have to do a bunch of other things. Things like reviewing AI mistakes, learning new tools, and extra coordination work. Again, this is crucial. When AI is used outside its frontier, say like for complex strategy or ambiguous tasks, then performance drops by 19 to 24%. Now you can zoom out and check. Despite billions spent on AI and data centers, economists are asking one question: where is the productivity boom? One leading skeptic points to a familiar idea, the so-low paradox. What is that? You see, during the 1970s and 1980s, computers were everywhere. They were widely present. The IT industry was the talk of the town, but its impact was not showing, especially in productivity statistics. Today, AI is in a similar situation. The technology may be transformative, but it's not showing in GDP numbers. Economists say that AI may not boost efficiency significantly in the near future. They're looking at just 0.5% to 0.7% increase over a decade. And this is where the hype meets hard reality. 95% of enterprise AI pilots fail. They do not deliver any meaningful ROI, any meaningful return on investment. An MIT study found that 95% of firms saw no revenue growth, 95%. Governments are watching this closely. India's economic survey this year makes a critical point. AI boosts productivity, but it raises job risks if adopted recklessly. And the reason is simple. AI raises the productivity of capital faster than labor. And governments and countries have to be cognizant of this fact. They must strike a balance. So I come back to the question we started with. Is AI boosting productivity? The honest answer is both yes and no. Yes, at the task level in the right contexts, but no at the economy-wide level, at least not yet. You could say the boost is selective. It concentrates gains in large firms and it often shifts work rather than eliminating it. The paradox is not that AI does not work. The paradox is that what AI does well is narrow, and what humans value is not just speed. So I guess the real question is not whether AI boosts productivity. The real question is who benefits, where do they benefit, and at what cost? And that debate is just getting started. Elon Musk is back in the headlines. Yesterday we told you about how China is challenging his companies. Today it's about his satellite network company. It's called Starlink. It provides satellite internet services from the space. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, Musk sent thousands of Starlink terminals to Kiev. This was to help Ukraine stay connected during the war. But now it's posing a problem. Ukraine says it is finding Starlink terminals on downed Russian drones. The claim is that Moscow has somehow obtained these terminals and that Russia is using Starlink for its own military operations against Ukraine. Our next report explains.
A technology that was supposed to connect the world is now guiding weapons across a battlefield. Starlink has become an unexpected weapon in the Ukraine war. It's Elon Musk's satellite internet network. What started as a lifeline for Ukrainian forces may now be helping the enemy. Ukrainian officials say they're finding something disturbing. Starlink terminals are showing up in the wreckage of Russian attack drones. Not one or two, hundreds of them. Ukrainian officials say the terminals are mounted on long-range drones. The same technology Ukraine depends on is now allegedly being used against them. Why does it matter? These satellite connections make Russian drones nearly impossible to jam. They can be guided with precision across vast distances. In a war where every technical advantage counts, this is significant. The irony is sharp. Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Starlink became Ukraine's digital backbone. It helped restore communications, maintain government services, and keep frontline units connected. Some Ukrainian drone operations relied on it. SpaceX's network was designed to beam high-speed internet from space to anywhere on Earth. It was never built for war, but war found it anyway. SpaceX insists it does not sell Starlink service to Russia. It does not ship to Russia. The company does not do business with the Russian military. So how are Russian forces getting access? War analysts point to a familiar workaround: third countries outside the war zone. Despite sanctions, terminals have reportedly been acquired through intermediaries. Some were then redirected to Russian units. Ukraine says it is working directly with SpaceX on a technical solution.
Western technology must continue to help the democratic world and protect civilians, rather than being used for terrorism and destroying peaceful cities.
Musk himself has defended Starlink's role. He calls it the backbone of Ukrainian military communications. But he has not confirmed how Russian forces may be accessing the system. All of this comes as Russian drone and missile attacks continue. Recent strikes have hit residential areas and energy infrastructure. Kyiv says thousands of drones have been launched in recent months. But amid this, diplomacy has also continued. U.S. President Donald Trump says he has personally asked Vladimir Putin. For what? To pause strikes on Kyiv for 1 week because of extreme cold.
It's a big pile of bad weather, the worst. But it was really, they said they've never experienced cold like that. And I personally asked President Putin not to fire into Kiev and the various towns for a week. And he agreed to do that. And I have to tell you, it was very nice.
Ukraine has welcomed the effort to stop energy attacks. But President Volodymyr Zelensky says the results will be measured by what actually happens on the ground.
I am grateful to the American side for their efforts to halt the strikes on our energy infrastructure at this time.
But even as diplomacy delivers a temporary pause, the deeper questions remain. Who controls the technology of war? And can a satellite network meant to connect the world be kept out of a battlefield?
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
A very warm welcome and thank you for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak. I'm Akanksha Swarup. Battleground Tamil Nadu is heating up. At the heart of the churn is a simple question: seat sharing. The DMK, dominant and confident after successive electoral victories, sees itself as the natural pole of Tamil Nadu politics. The Congress, once a ruling force in the state and now a junior partner, insists it deserves more than just symbolic representation. And caught between the arithmetic of winnability and the politics of prestige, the alliance appears headed for tough negotiations. But what's adding a new layer of intrigue this time is Congress's growing warmth towards actor-turned-politician Vijay. While Vijay's TVK is still untested at the ballot box, his mass appeal is undeniable. Congress leaders praising Vijay's political entry, attending shared platforms and keeping channels open has not gone unnoticed in Chennai's own power corridors. For the DMK, this outreach raises eyebrows. Congress, however, appears to be playing a slightly different game, one that goes beyond immediate electoral math. Which brings us to the larger question. Is Congress using its proximity to Vijay as leverage with the DMK? Is this a subtle signal to the DMK that Congress has options? Or is this simply Congress hedging its bets, keeping lines open in a state where its independent footprint has shrunk dramatically over the years? That's the question we'll be taking up with our guests in just a bit. But that's our first topic of the debate. Also, is Vijay the X-factor in battleground Tamil Nadu or just a leverage over here in the overall geopolitical calculus of the upcoming Tamil Nadu Assembly poll? We'll also dive deeper into what's next in Maharashtra politics as fate of NCP hangs in balance. And accused of grievous charges, Tarseem Singh Varech is dancing his way to glory in Jordan. We'll get you all the details about the raging controversy. The man who's also been accused of a sexual crime, now heading the country in Jordan. But first, let's get you the top developments as far as the Congress-DMK seat-sharing conundrum is concerned. Congress has formed a committee, remember, and placed forth its list of demands before Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin. The DMK has, of course, sought more time from Rahul Gandhi to respond to these demands. Sources say Congress has demanded more seats for elections and a share in the government formation. However, DMK is not very enthusiastic about share in government formation, as has always been the case in the years that have followed. However, Congress still feels that DMK is a valued ally and therefore wants to continue this alliance. A few issues have been ironed out at the Rahul Gandhi Kadimoi meeting, but suspense over seat sharing and other demands still continues. But it's no surprise that Congress is highly dependent on DMK if it wants to say through in the upcoming election. And history is witness to this. Why so? Because during the 2014 Lok Sabha polls, Congress and DMK fought separately. The Congress vote share was 4.37% and DMK's vote share was 23.91%. Let's tell you about 2019 Lok Sabha elections. DMK and Congress fought together. The Congress vote share was 12.61% and DMK's vote share was 33.53%.
For our next story, let's start with something that many of us find boring. Research papers. STEM research papers. STEM, as you would know, stands for science, technology, engineering and mathematics. And STEM research papers have something in common. Gender bias. You heard that right. Gender bias. A massive new study is out. It looked at more than 36 million scientific papers. They spanned over more than a century, and here's what they found. Papers written by women take 7 to 14% longer to clear. 7 to 14% longer to get through peer review. This is compared to papers written by men. So same journal, same year, same length, same number of authors, same readability. The only difference? The gender of the author. That makes all the difference. And you may say that 7 to 14% is not an earth-shattering number, but this is how bias works in the real world. It gets added up. Say women scientists have around 50 publications, 50. You add this delay to that, this 7 to 14% delay, and the wait can be from 300 to 700 extra days. That's 1 to 2 years lost. That can make a huge difference in any field, but it's especially big in academia. It's the difference between getting a tenure or missing it, between winning a grant or losing it. And this is not limited to one field or one country. This study found the same gap across disciplines, even in fields where women are well represented. And this tells us something uncomfortable, if not new, that bias does not disappear even when more women enter the room. Of course, this is not limited to academia. Let's walk into a startup pitch room. You'll see the same bias. Here's what the data shows globally. Say men and women pitch identical business ideas. The same business ideas. Men are 60% more likely to win pitch competitions. Investors fund 68% of male pitches, but only 32% of female ones. Female-led startups get just 2 to 3% of global VC funding. And when women do get funded, they receive 14 to 30% less money for the same ideas. In India, the numbers are even starker. Women-led startups in India get under 5% of venture capital. Funding peaked in 2021, but then it collapsed by 75% in 2 years. And this is not because women build worse companies. In fact, post-funding data shows that women-led startups often perform as well, if not better. So what is happening here? Well, researchers discovered that investors ask men and women different questions. Men, for instance, get promotion-focused questions. Questions like, how big can this get? What is the upside? And how fast can you scale? That's what men are asked. What are women asked? Women get prevention-focused questions like, what if this fails? How will you manage risk? What's your backup plan? And that's not all. Men benefit from assumed competence, but women must prove competence again and again. Men raise tens of thousands more per deal just on perceived credibility. And failure? For men, failure is experience. For women, it is a warning label. Women founders are 22% less likely to restart after failure. And I know I've talked only about 2 fields tonight, academia and startups. But I'm sure we can find such examples in every field. It is all pervasive. And that is why it's so dangerous. We keep talking about fixing inequality. We quote leaders. We give messages of women empowerment. But when inequality is built into systems, you can't fix it with inspiration alone. You have to redesign the entire machine. So the next time someone says women just need to lean in, we have to ask them, lean into what? A system that delays them, a system that questions them, a system that funds them less, and a system that then asks, why aren't there more women at the top? Because addressing bias is not just about intent, it's also about outcomes. And as the numbers show, we are failing miserably on that front.